Lights, camera, action.
Hey guys,
Hey everyone.
welcome back to the podcast. I'm Jon,
I am Emily.
and this is Married to Movies. We hope that you guys have had a wonderful week. Last time we talked about Baby Driver, which was a lot of fun. We actually had a lot of fun doing a segment talking about music and like what our killer track would be, something that we've never really done before. So if you didn't listen to that episode and you like Baby Driver, go check it out. Or if you just want to hear the music part, skip to like the very end of the episode. I think probably like the last 10 minutes or something. But it was a lot of fun just talking about that with you. We made a good memory there.
Yeah, and I actually just bought Baby Driver today on DVD.
Nice. Perfect. Well, that was last week. This week, we're talking about The Shawshank Redemption, a movie that was new to both Emily and I. A very awesome movie. I mean, it's a movie that has really made a massive impact, a lasting legacy on the film industry.
Yeah.
And it was actually recommended to us by a friend in a roundabout way. We knew that it was one of his favorite movies, and we actually asked him, hey, would you maybe want to talk about this on the podcast with us? And he said, yeah. And so today, as you can tell by the title, we are going to be welcoming Phil Conrad back into the studio.
Yes.
We actually had him on the podcast a little over a year ago to record It's a Wonderful Life.
During our Christmas series.
Yes, we did a little series in season 2 where we did like 4 Christmas movies, and he came and recorded that one with us, which was a lot of fun. So he's back in the studio today. We're going to be talking about The Shawshank Redemption. So he's going to be on here in a little bit, and it's going to be really, really good. So we hope you guys are excited because we went all out for this episode. We did something that we've never done before. It was really, honestly, an amazing memory for you and I that we're going to be carrying for the rest of our lives. And actually, it impacted some of our extended family as well. So it was very, very cool. If you want to hear more about that, make sure you stick around, listen to the episode to when Phil is on here, because we're not going to reveal it until he's actually here on the episode.
Yes.
And on that note, this is our season finale.
It's hard to believe.
Hard to believe. Season 3 is coming to a close, but going out with a bang to be sure. Not only is this movie phenomenal, it's a fantastic movie, but we're having a guest on here, and we really did something pretty special for this episode. So make sure you stick around, listen for all that. But at the end of this episode, because it is our season 3 finale, we have some announcements, some things we need to share with you guys. So if you could care less about The Shawshank Redemption, but for some reason you started this episode to see what we're going to say, skip to the very end of the episode because we have some updates on the show itself that we want to share with you guys. We won't really be making any posts on social media about it or anything, at least not right now, maybe later in the future. But if you want to know about it, then make sure you stick around for the end of the episode. So, without further ado, I think we should get started.
All right. Well, The Shawshank Redemption was released on October 14th of 1994. It was directed by Frank Darabont, I believe is how you say his last name. And I was researching just like some other movies that he's done. He did a few that I had heard of, but one thing that I thought was very interesting is he also directed a few episodes of Stranger Things.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Oh, very cool.
This movie was starring Tim Robbins, Morgan Freeman, Clancy Brown, Bob Gunton, Gil Bellows, James Whitmore, William Sadler, and Mark Rolston. It was distributed by Warner Bros. And Columbia Pictures. It has a runtime of 2 hours and 22 minutes. It is rated R. Its budget was $25 million and box office total was $73.3 million. So I was reading, and I mean, you can even just tell from the numbers, it was kind of a flop when it first came out. Like, it didn't make that much money.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously it caught on quickly and people realized like, oh, this actually is a very well done movie. So I would be curious to know if it was released today, just knowing what we know about it, how much it would have made. Just because, you know, like you said before, it really did have a major impact on the film industry.
Yeah, I mean, it's revered as one of the greatest redemption films, period. One of the greatest prison movies. I mean, it's an extremely well done film. Feels like a movie that was handled with extreme care. The story's really good. The acting is fantastic. Just everything about it is really great. It's an iconic movie. You know, at this point, there's definitely some nostalgia that's attached to it, but I don't think it's one of those movies that like lives on because of nostalgia. It just lives on because it truly is a great film.
Right.
You know, and it's crazy. It's actually 31 years old now. But yeah, like you said, I'd be interested to know like what kind of numbers it would do if there was like a movie theater re-release. But, you know, re-releases never do like nearly as good as the original release just because people have already seen it. Like sometimes they do, but like if it was re-released with the like, I guess, hype that surrounds the movie.
Yeah.
Like if people showed up for it type thing. So I would be interested, but none of that stuff really matters. I mean, it's a great movie, regardless of box office numbers or anything else. Like that doesn't necessarily have to be a indicator of if it's a good movie or not.
Well, moving on to fun facts. I didn't find a ton, but I have a decent amount. My first one is that other actors considered to play Andy included Tom Hanks, Tom Cruise, and Kevin Costner. And Tom Hanks actually came to the table read of the script. I can't remember exactly why he decided against.
It was not because he didn't want to do it. It was because he was committed to doing Forrest Gump.
That's right. Yes, I do remember hearing or seeing that. My next fact is that Tim Robbins, who plays Andy, spent time in solitary confinement and interacted with the bird that played Brooke's pet, Jake, to prepare for his role as Andy. Yes.
And I'm going to pump the brakes real quick. I feel like we kind of breezed past those alternative castings.
Sorry. Yes.
I'm going to touch on at least the Tom Cruise one later, but Tom Hanks or Kevin Costner would have been fantastic castings for this.
I agree.
And Tom Cruise as well. But I'm going to talk about him a little bit later. But, you know, it's very interesting to me that those guys were potentially attached to this film. Obviously, Tom Hanks was very interested. Didn't work out the way that, you know, maybe he wanted it to because he was interested, but he was just committed to Forrest Gump. But it would be interesting just kind of in a retrospective way to see how maybe if this film, like how much better it would have done if Tom Hanks was attached to it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Just because, like, you know, he's always had big box office success. So, yeah, I don't know. But those are solid castings.
Yeah.
I'm very happy with Tim Robbins.
Yes, me too.
I don't know that I would want to see anybody else in the role, but any of those guys would have been solid picks.
Continuing on casting details, Brad Pitt was actually cast in the role of Tommy.
I saw that.
But then Thelma and Louise came out, and suddenly he was not so unknown as he was originally. So he decided to drop out to pursue other opportunities.
Yes, actually, I saw that he was still interested in doing it. but I have it in my. Oh, here it is. Yes. So he was interested in doing it, but like you said, like he pursued other opportunities because that movie blew up. What was it? Thelma and Louise?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Because that blew up, he got an opportunity to do Interview with the Vampire, which was kind of a bigger role for him. Mm-hmm. So it made more sense for him to take that, which I don't blame him. I mean, Brad Pitt's had a phenomenal career.
Right.
And you got to take what makes the most sense.
Mm-hmm.
But man, it would have been cool to see Brad Pitt in this role, like a very young Brad Pitt. That would have been pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. In this movie, Andy, as we know, leaves a note under an oak tree for Red that directs Red to their little reunion that they have in Mexico. And this tree became known as the Shawshank tree for obvious reasons and became a bit of a tourist attraction, also for obvious reasons. But then in 2011, the tree was sadly struck by lightning. And the tree did stay up, but it was damaged. And then in 2016, strong winds kind of finished the job and took it down. But in 2017, they cut the tree down completely and used it to make Shawshank memorabilia.
Yes.
So that'd be pretty cool to own like a little souvenir made from the tree.
Yes, it would. Yeah, it's too bad. I would have loved to see like that tree in person.
Which I didn't see. Do you know where the tree was located?
I don't.
It wouldn't have been in Ohio, would it have been?
I don't know.
Okay.
I did not look into that, but it would have been really cool to see that in person.
The reason I say Ohio is because that's where a lot of this movie was filmed. But
Right.
So my next fact is that you can catch a glimpse of Morgan Freeman's son in this movie. The mugshots of him as like when he first went to prison.
Yes.
That was pictures of his son, Alfonso. So.
Very neat.
Yes,
I like it.
I do too. Shawshank was actually the first movie that Morgan Freeman ever narrated. So, yeah. So he, as we know, narrates lots of things now, documentaries.
Yes,
and
he's known for his voice.
Yes.
And that would probably be attributed to this film.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
But this was his little narration debut.
Ah, very cool. He's got a wonderful voice.
Yes.
It is rich with great timbre. That's how James Earl Jones' voice was described. And I would say he's got a voice. You know, it's different. It's not as like the deep Southern voice like James Earl Jones, but it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I don't think we've touched on this yet. I know we talked about it with Phil, but this movie was based off of a novella by Stephen King.
Yes.
Called, what was it called? It was someone's name in the Shawshank Redemption.
I thought it was.
I can't remember. It was a woman's name.
Yes, it's the actress.
Yeah.
What is it?
This has nothing to do with my fact, but it's gonna bother me.
Rita Hayworth
and
the Shawshank Redemption.
Yes. So that was the book's title. And so the director of this movie made a check out to Stephen King to get the rights to his novella. He paid him $5,000, wrote him a check for $5,000, and Stephen King never bothered to cash it. He didn't need the cash by that time, but he took things a step further and he framed the check and then sent it back to the director. And he included a note that said, "In case you ever need bail money, love, Steve."
Yes, that was actually one of my details.
Gosh, I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine. Yes, I thought that was really cool. Just that Stephen King decided not to cash it. Mm-hmm. That made for a cool movie memory
Yeah.
for Darabont.
Yes. My last fact, I just was kind of appalled by. just because I think it's kind of funny. So whenever the crew was filming a scene with Brooks' crow, Jake, the American Humane Society sent some representatives to ensure that the crow was being treated well. They were happy with how the crow was treated, but they objected to the scene where Brooks feeds his crow a maggot. This was deemed to be an act of cruelty toward the maggot, and they demanded that the crew find a maggot that had died of natural causes before shooting the scene.
Yeah, what a load of crap.
I read that and I was like, what?
Yeah, like, let's have some perspective here, people.
It's a maggot.
It's a maggot. Like there's no room for argument on this. There's no, it's very annoying. Like, to the point where it's not worth my time to even talk about this. But
I understand them wanting the crow to be treated well. Like, animal cruelty is a thing on sets, especially in older movies.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's like a long history of like dogs dying on movie sets, just like older movies, just because they were treated poorly and stuff like that. So, like, we need to be good stewards of God's creation. However,
but a maggot.
Yeah, and not even the fact that just like oh, it's a maggot, it doesn't matter, but just the fact that like it is food for another animal.
Right,
this is the circle of life. Like, it is okay.
Yes.
It's ridiculous.
I'm sorry to any maggot lovers out there if I've offended you, but I just think
can
it's
get over it and move on with your life.
But on that note, that is all that I had for facts.
Okay. Well, I'm going to skip through my first couple details because it was directly related to what you've already said.
Really sorry.
No, it's okay. All right. So Darabont did acquire the rights to Stephen King's novella, Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption, and he expanded on the characters and the story. One of the most notable additions was that he made Brooks a tragic figure, and he had Tommy murdered rather than being transferred to another prison.
Oh, was that what happened in the book?
Yes, Tommy was not murdered. He ended up just being transferred out. But I think that makes the movie all the more tragic, and that is ultimately what makes the movie so good. Like, that's why the final, I guess it's not the final scene, but like the triumph of Andy escaping the prison, that's what makes it so good, is that the whole movie, he's getting beat down. The whole thing is a tragedy. So anyways, I'll keep moving. So after acquiring the rights, Darabont got right away to working on a screenplay, and it only took him 8 weeks to write the screenplay. So 2 months, which I find to be honestly pretty impressive for something that's so, I would say, airtight. And
it's a long movie too.
It is. It's a long movie. It's extremely well done. So yeah, I have kudos to him on writing it in 8 weeks. Granted, he probably didn't have anything else going on. But regardless. Okay, earlier when we were mentioning that Mr. Phil Conrad was going to be in the studio today, we made note of the last episode he was on, which was It's a Wonderful Life. And coincidentally, the movie itself is inspired by Frank Capra's films. I apologize if I'm saying his last name incorrectly, which would be some specific examples that inspired The Shawshank Redemption is It's a Wonderful Life, as well as Goodfellas and Birdman of Alcatraz. I've never watched Goodfellas. It is on my list of one that I really want to watch. And I've never seen Birdman of Alcatraz. I'd be interested to know more about that. It's got quite a unique title. So I'm sure it's probably good. One of the other things that Darabont changed about the movie is, or I guess the story, is Warden Norton. So in the book, there are multiple wardens. It's not just one singular warden. And so he kind of made him like a composite of all the different wardens.
Gotcha.
Just to kind of give the the story like a primary antagonist to
Yeah.
focus on.
I'm glad that they did that. I feel like it might have been a little too much to follow had there been several different wardens, unless they just had like, one main one and then a few like background ones. But I'm glad that they kind of just combined them all into one person.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I think it could have been done well, but it would have had to be more of a focus in terms of the story of like how it affected the prisoners. Like, we got a new warden in and like he's and like trying to figure out how he acts and like, oh, he's actually nice in this way. The other warden wasn't, but then we find out like he's way worse in this way or something along those lines. I think you could successfully do it well in the story, but it would maybe take precedence like over other parts of the film. It could potentially take away from the main story. But okay, moving on. So at the time, so this was released in 1994, you said?
Correct.
Okay, so at that time, a year prior, when the script was written and so on, prison films were actually not doing very well. They were viewed as they were not viewed as box office successes. They were more often viewed as flops and a risk. But when Darabont presented the screenplay to shoot, I had the name in here. I apologize. I'm going to find the production company real quick. Let's see. It was Castle Rock Entertainment. Okay, so I apologize for that. I got it pulled up real quick. So when he presented the screenplay to Castle Rock Entertainment, there was a producer by the name of Liz Glotzer. She loved it so much that she threatened to quit if Castle Rock did not choose to back this film.
Wow.
And on that note, Rob Reiner, who was also of Castle Rock Entertainment, and he was a producer as well, he liked it so much that, not only was he a producer, he was a co-founder of Castle Rock Entertainment.
Okay.
He liked it so much that not only did he offer to back the film, he offered $2.4 million, or between $2.4 million and $3 million to Darabont directly to allow him to direct the movie instead of Darabont. So Rob Reiner liked it so much, he said, hey, I'll give you $2.4 to $3 million if you let me direct it.
Wow.
Yeah. Obviously, as we know, Darabont chose not to take that offer, but he said he seriously considered it.
Yeah. Wow.
Just because, it would have actually allowed him to, at the time, become a success, which we know now that he is. But up to that point, he really didn't have anything to go off of.
Right.
And so for him, this is a kind of a validation. But he said that, had I taken that check, I would have looked back at my life. And if I had died, the next week, I would have had nothing to show that I did. I just would have all this money.
Yeah.
So he chose to walk away from it. But on that note, Rob Reiner, when he was saying that he wanted to direct it, he was going to hire Tom Cruise to play Andy. So that's where that comes in. And he was going to hire Harrison Ford to play Red.
Oh, I did not see that part.
Yes. So I thought that was very interesting that he was so involved and loved it so much that he already had castings in mind. And Reiner had actually worked with Stephen King already. He had adapted his novella, The Body, which I've never heard of or read or anything. And he also adapted Stand By Me, which I have heard of. That was a Kiefer Sutherland movie back in '86. I've not watched it, but I've heard it's fantastic. But anyways, Reiner was already a director and he had worked with King, so it sounded like he was really trying to grease the wheels to get this thing going. But anyways, it inevitably did not work out that way, which is great. Okay, so you mentioned Ohio earlier. The movie was shot almost entirely and exclusively in Mansfield, Ohio, at the Ohio State Reformatory. That's a pretty important place because it basically is the Shawshank prison. But also, stay tuned because we're going to talk about it quite a bit later in the episode. Hint, hint. Okay, so the iconic escape scene I mentioned earlier, where Tim Robbins, a.k.a. Andy, crawls through a mile of crap.
Literally.
Yeah. And he finally escapes. It was not actually crap.
I'd hope not.
It was a mix of water, chocolate syrup, and sawdust.
Interesting.
Yes.
It's gross.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess the sawdust, they had to make it chunky or something.
Well, I would assume if sawdust gets wet, it probably clumps together some.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's gross. But the stream where Andy ends up when he climbs out of the pipe, that's like a real stream. It was actually deemed toxic by a chemist. So the production crew dammed the stream and they got new water and they did treatment and everything on it so that it would be okay for him to get in there.
I wonder what would have been in it to make it toxic.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, maybe it was an actual human waste stream or something of that nature. Okay. One of the most iconic scenes in the movie, very memorable, is when Tim Robbins, Andy, is in the office and the police officer decides to, or security guard, prison guard, decides to go to the bathroom and, quote, pinch a loaf. Andy locks him in there and then chooses to blare music into the courtyard. And it's a really kind of triumphant scene. This scene was actually not in the script, and it was a suggestion by Tim Robbins.
Oh, nice. I loved that scene. I thought it was great.
Yeah, it was his suggestion to turn the volume up defiantly. So I thought that was pretty cool. The beach scene, the reunion, was not filmed in Mexico. It was filmed in the Virgin Islands. Let's see. I have just a few more. You actually touched on the majority of those, so I'm going to skip all of those. Okay, so Darabont was committed to making this film and doing it to the best of his ability, which meant that there were multiple takes done of every scene. Now, I'm not a director. Not all directors hold this state of mind. Sometimes you need to have multiple takes.
Right.
Sometimes you don't. Very famously, Matthew McConaughey, the scene in Interstellar where he's bawling when he finally gets back on to the ship and he watches all the videos of his kids. He sees that they're all grown up now. That was the first take. You don't need to do any more takes.
Right.
It's done. That scene is perfect. So there are times where you need to do them. There are times where you don't. That didn't really matter to Darabont. He just wanted to do multiple takes to the point where Morgan Freeman was actually very frustrated with him, and it led to a shoulder injury during the baseball scene because he was doing the same motion repeatedly. He ended up actually hurting himself a little bit.
Yeah.
But on that note, shoots were often very long, and a typical day on set was about 18 hours.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, it does not sound very fun. I mean, ultimately, the movie's fantastic. I can't imagine being on the cutting floor for in the editing room for all that, because that's a lot of takes.
That's a lot of takes.
Just to sit through all of them and be like, okay, that's the best, that's the best. But I mean, we got a great movie,
right?
So, most of the shots in the prison, where you're actually in the prison, were filmed on a custom-built set at the Westinghouse factory. And extras in the film were real former inmates and prison guards.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
And that is all I have for my production details.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and move into ratings. I want to hear what you would rate this movie, John.
Okay. I'm going to keep things brief. just because we've got Phil coming on here soon, and I think our conversation with him was really strong. So if I was going to rate this movie, I think I'm going to give it a 91.
Okay.
Maybe a 90. I don't remember. I remember in our conversation with Phil that I think we both gave our ratings at that time as well. So
whoops.
if my rating conflicts, I am so sorry. But we filmed that ahead of time, and so we're going off of memory here. So I'm shooting for 90 or 91.
Okay. I was going to give this movie a 90, so I'm right there with you.
Perfect. I think that's a fantastic rating for this movie. I don't necessarily have any like critiques of the film itself. Like as far as like this could have been done better here or that or anything. Like I think the movie is done excellent in like every regard. I don't have any suggestions. I don't have any pacing issues. I don't have any like, oh, I didn't like this. Really the only thing about the movie is just that this is a heavy film.
It is.
It's very like emotionally grueling. Obviously, just because from the get-go, like Andy's wife is unfaithful to him. So that is gut-wrenching.
And then he's wrongfully imprisoned.
But then, yes, he's wrongfully imprisoned for their murder, and he did not, kill her or her lover. And then, throughout the whole film, he's just beaten down.
Literally and figuratively.
Yes, very literally and figuratively. And it's, through and through the whole movie, it's heartbreaking to watch. But that's not a critique of the film. That is just a note that this movie itself it's hard. It's hard to watch. It's sad. And it's sad because it's a reality for a lot of people on a lot of different levels. I mean, there's been plenty of wrongfully imprisoned people throughout. I mean, dating back thousands of years, we have historical accounts of that happening.
Yeah.
So that's not anything that's new, and it's extremely sad every time that it happens. But also, infidelity is extremely sad. That happens to lots of people. And also just the reality of prison life. Maybe people did go there rightfully, but just the idea that prison is more than just like the removal from society. That like, listen, this is an R-rated conversation. It is an R-rated movie that like rape does happen in prison. That's extremely sad. And things of that nature. So this movie is a hard watch.
Yes, for sure.
But that's what makes it so triumphant when Andy escapes. That's what, I mean, as an audience member, you're just broken the whole way through. So you're rooting for him the whole time.
Right.
And then when he finally gets there, it's just like, yes, like I'm so excited. It's so sad. It's so good. And the score is fantastic. That's maybe one of my favorite parts about this film.
Yeah.
Is the score. And the location. I mean, the prison itself is just as much a character as everything else in this film.
For sure.
And the fact that like it's in Ohio, it's not that far from us. It's very cool, and done extremely well. All the shots, it's a tangible place. It feels like it's living and it's breathing, and that there's a life there beyond just like being a location. I don't know. I could kind of ramble on and on, but the point is that this is a really, really well done movie.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I would definitely echo everything that you have said so far. I like this movie, not mostly but a lot of the reason why I like this movie is because prison movies do just intrigue me. Like my dad's a police officer, and I always like when there was a jail being built in our hometown, like he took me and my sister on like a tour of it before there were inmates, obviously. And then like he would take us to the tower afterward. And we would like look in and see like, you know, the people in there, and just he would show me how everything worked, and the dispatchers up there would talk to me about everything. So I've always been really intrigued by just prisons and jails and things like that. So it really kind of shocked me when you said earlier that back then, like, prison movies were not well received or were not big hits or anything. Just because I feel like there's a lot of people like me that are really interested in these kind of movies.
Yeah, I think that maybe more so because of the time. So
Yeah.
like by the early 90s, there had been a lot of prison movies.
Yeah.
Kind of in the same way as like Westerns. By that time, like
That makes
there had
sense.
been a lot of Westerns.
Yeah.
So it's not that like people were uninterested. It was just kind of almost like superhero movies today.
Right.
You know, it's like it's everywhere you turn.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so that's one reason why I scored it highly, is just because, I mean, it's just very interesting to me. But obviously the main reason why I scored it so highly is just like you said, like the redemption aspect of it. The only reason why it's not higher, kind of like you were saying, like, it's not because I have any critiques, it's just a matter of personal preference. I really struggled to watch the majority of this movie, and I think
Yeah.
that's probably what makes it such a strong movie, is because it embodies what real life prisoners go through and have gone through. But it's
or even like, I mean, something I didn't touch on, but when Brooks gets out of jail.
yes, yeah,
Like, he can't
That's-
live with his own life.
Right.
You know, being outside of jail. That was heartbreaking.
right,
Especially because it felt like there was a lot of character development there.
yeah,
There's just so much tragedy.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. But yeah, I think that's all I was gonna say, just as far as my scoring goes.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Well, is there anything else you want to touch on before we welcome Phil into the studio?
I think that's it.
All right. Well, guys, enjoy. All right, everybody. Well, today we have a guest in the studio.
Yes.
Not a first-time guest. He has been on the show before. He is one of our personal favorites. It is Mr. Philip Conrad back in the studio. Hi, Phil.
Hello. I'm glad to be one of your personal favorites.
Yes, of course. You got us to watch two phenomenal movies that were new to us, that we had never watched before, that are some of your personal favorite movies.
And now some of our personal favorites.
Yes, and now some of our personal favorites. The first one being, I keep wanting to say A Christmas Story, but
It's a Wonderful
It's
Life.
a Wonderful Life. Yes, yes. So It's a Wonderful Life, which was one of our Christmas episodes last year. I guess
23.
2 years ago now. Yeah, 23, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But that's a phenomenal movie. And if you haven't listened to that podcast, like, what are you doing? Go listen to that episode. It's great. I mean, Phil's on it, so. And then today, we're talking about The Shawshank Redemption. One of your other favorite movies, again, new to us. We had never watched it, and we loved it.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. We actually loved it so much that we did something for the podcast that we've never done before, which was actually your idea.
Yeah.
And it was super awesome and super cool. So it's fitting that this episode is the finale for our season, with something so cool, so different that we've never done for a movie. We actually went to Shawshank.
We went on a field trip to the
Yes.
prison. It was
Yes.
spectacular.
Yes, it was awesome. It was so much fun. I was not expecting it to be so close. I had no idea that it was in Ohio. You know,
Yeah.
it was only like a total round trip, or not round trip, but total one way, like 4 hours.
I think
like,
so.
Yeah, which was not bad at all. And to be able to go do it and see it was crazy. And you're just a gold mine for fantastic ideas, Phil.
That's what I try to do.
So I think before we even dive into the movie at all, let's just take some time talking about the field trip. What were your thoughts going into it? What were things that were surprising to you, or just the overall feeling of once you got there, kind of the presence of Shawshank?
So we went in October of 2024.
Yes.
The film came out in 1994. So that was like the 30-year
Yes.
anniversary.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
I think they had something earlier in the year at the facility that to kind of celebrate and mark that 30-year anniversary of it all. But so it's kind of cool to be there, 30 years afterwards. So I guess my expectations of it weren't super high because 30 years a space maybe reused or just repurposed for other films or maybe other whatever shows or whatever. But so I guess I was pleasantly surprised that of what kind of was still there in terms of how it was when they were filming it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't seem like a lot had changed. I was kind of bummed when we couldn't go to like some of the locations that were so integral in the movie, like the courtyard and I think where they show like where they were watching a movie and things like that. But it was still really cool, and being able to see like the props too that they used and things like that.
Yeah, all the props and all the kind of the office, I guess, scenes of the warden's office and kind of some of those areas that was really cool. And like coming into the building, and when I recently watched the film again, I was like really paying attention to how they were painting into the shot of the prison. And that was really kind of spectacular. We'll kind of talk about that later, but I feel like the building sort of plays another character in the film, and to be able to be there, it's almost like meeting one of the characters in the movie. That was kind of the fun thing about the whole experience.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the things that I feel like was my biggest takeaway was pretty much right when we first pulled up, mostly because of what you were just talking about, like that kind of opening sequence when you're first at the prison, that kind of zooming shot of the front of the prison and everything. It's so it's a lot to take in, and like you said, like it's very true. It is kind of another character of the film. But we pull into the parking lot and we sit there, and it's like that's it. It's the front of the prison. It's like, wow, this is crazy, and it's so much bigger than you think it is.
The architecture was beautiful.
Yes,
Yeah.
It was insane. It was just like very, I don't know if ornate is the right word, but like,
Right.
Like it had a lot of life, and like even in the very front of the building, there was kind of this little circle courtyard, like before you enter, like. You would never know it's there just by watching the movie.
Right.
But like things like that were so cool to take in that that probably left the biggest impression on me, was just that initial like awe feeling of how big this place is and how, I guess, well preserved.
Yeah.
It's
right.
been, yeah.
Because I think it served as a prison up until, what did they say? Was it 91 or what?
I think
Not
it
even
was
then.
in the 90s.
Yeah.
Was it still? Yeah.
Yeah.
That would just really, soon, between the time of that ending and the filming, it wasn't too much time between there. So
Right.
kind of interesting that way too.
Yeah, and it was interesting to learn that other movies had been filmed there as well.
That was one of the most interesting things I found as well. Yes. So what they say, Tango and Cash, which I'd never seen.
Yes.
But Air Force One, which was
Right.
one I vividly remember watching. I think we had it on VHS back, a while ago. But
Yeah.
I always enjoyed that movie too, and kind of to see where that was, some of the scenes where that was filmed was really kind of neat too. Kind of a extra treat.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was just cool because like they had the little kiosk type, if you want to call it that, like educational places where they had videos you could watch, and
Right.
they were informative. And that was one of the things, is like, look at all the movies that have been filmed here, and they had little promos about them. And yeah, Tango and Cash, which was
that still? I think Sylvester Stallone was in that
yeah,
one.
Stallone and Kurt Russell, I think.
Okay.
And then Air Force One,
Harrison Ford.
Right. Yeah. Harrison
And then you
Ford.
go to Star Wars, and you're like,
Right.
Yeah.
it's a Star Wars connection. That's cool.
Yes. Yeah. But it was crazy because like they even built part of like the gate entrance specifically for Air Force One.
Right.
Which was still there. I mean, by now, like modern day, it was kind of falling apart a little bit.
Right,
But
yeah.
for the most part, it was still together.
Yeah.
So it was cool to see that. And, you know, kind of like Em was saying, there were some parts of the prison that we didn't get to see. Partially because we went in October and they do like a haunted prison thing.
Yeah.
So that kind of stunk. But like also, we really wanted to go see the courtyard because that was such like a big part of the movie.
Yeah.
And
Right.
we even asked like, hey, how do we get to the courtyard? And they're like, oh, there's another active prison back there. Like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, you probably don't want to go back there.
Yeah, we didn't really. Yeah.
Yeah. I had no idea that the facility was like 4 or 5 buildings total. you
Yeah,
know?
I know. It was quite the big, complex, and like, just kind of learning what they still use and what they don't use, I guess. So it was kind of, I wasn't sure going in how much we'd be able to see either. So again, kind of
Right.
like, and because they had that special kind of Halloween theme thing going on,
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. So, but I was pretty, it was fun. It was,
Yeah.
and like, again, like with the expectations, like you go in and like, there's a lot of fencing around it. And then there's like all these like food trucks that are kind of there in front, and you're like,
Yeah.
that's too bad. But it's just,
Yeah.
you can't, I don't know. They, they're trying to make a buck. And so,
Right.
Right.
And
understand that.
one thing that was cool and very different was the prison cells.
Yes.
So I think on one of the placards, because those were all over the place, just telling you little bits and details about filming and the prison history itself. One of the things that they mentioned was that in order to actually shoot the scenes where they're inside the prison cells, they had to build prison cells because the actual prison cells were too small to fit like your actors and cameraman, director, and have any sort of room.
Yeah. There's no way that would have been set up well for filming a movie.
No.
No.
Yeah, I think
What would the measurements have been of those?
the standard ones, the real ones. So the real ones, I think they said were like 4 feet by 7 feet.
I think you're.
It was-
you might
yeah,
be
they were
right.
pretty
They were
tiny.
tiny.
Yeah, it was crazy, and there were 2 beds.
Yeah. There were bunk beds in each one.
Yeah.
And like a sink and a toilet. Like, I mean, it was jam packed. And I think they said that the ones that they made were like maybe 7 by 11 or something like
Yeah.
that.
They looked, quite a bit bigger than in the movie. And
Yeah.
just one person per cell. And
Right. Yeah.
so,
It was crazy to kind of see that and like, I don't know, take it all in because obviously it's very different today. Like paint's peeling and,
Yeah.
it's not active. So it's
Right.
like, man, this is extra like
creepy.
creepy. But also just like being so claustrophobic. Like,
yes.
And
Can't-
so high up. Like,
Yeah.
I couldn't
Yeah.
believe how high up we were when we went into
What?
the tower.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
were like 3 or 4 floors, or I mean,
Yeah.
it was
Probably.
pretty.
Yeah.
It was pretty high up.
it was
Yeah.
insane because when we finally got there, like, we didn't really feel like we were that high up. And then you start walking through the prison cells and they kind of have the railing and you look down and it's like, oh, whoa, we're like 4 stories high. Like, this is insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just so much that like, obviously as any movie is, it's different than reality. But it was crazy to take all that in and just physically be there.
Yeah, and it's so cool to see the space physically, and then it just kind of makes you appreciate how they film movies and do all
Right.
that work to make it what it is. So that's just always a lot of fun too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And one thing that just popped into my mind as one of the big takeaways was the cathedral or where they had like worship service and everything, which that wasn't really featured in the film. But it was a big part because it's like we went from there and then kind of went over to the prison cells shortly thereafter. But that was where one of the the prison break attempts happened.
Right.
And it's like we're like walking around kind of looking at everything, and there's like this hole in the wall.
Maybe
And
like 3 inches
Literally a
deep.
hole in the wall.
yeah, literally, yeah. And there was like a plaque saying what it was, but it was like some prisoner had attempted to break through because the pastor or priest, whatever, had he would bring 3 prisoners in for like a month at a time and be his assistant, and he would leave them unattended. And one guy decided that he was going to start trying to break through and escape. And he got through. He ended up getting fully through a layer of brick, only to find another brick wall behind it. And
Yeah.
he gave up.
He should have watched the movie. It's
He should
have,
that's his
yes.
problem. But
Yeah.
the movie was a couple years away, so I guess he was out of luck.
Yeah. Oh man.
I would like to go back at some point in the future, just because like they had lots of rooms under construction or
Yeah.
like renovating or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to go back when all that's done, just to be able to go through that full tour again and see what it looks like once it's finished.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, to go a different time of year where there's maybe more things areas you can go into and see would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
The one thing I liked, they had the room like in the halfway house where Brooks went to stay, and then later on,
Yes.
Red went to stay. That was also in the prison, which was really cool.
Yes.
And kind of show how they, where that was filmed. And
Yeah. Yeah, that was really cool. I mean, it makes sense that they just like created a set for that.
yeah,
But it was cool that it was they just made it in the prison too.
Right.
Like it wasn't a separate location or like a stage or anything. So to be able to go there and be like, oh, this is the room. Like,
Yeah.
this is crazy. And then we actually continued the field trip because there were some additional filming locations that were not far from the prison.
right.
So we went to the halfway house that was like they used for the exterior, those shots. So we went and saw that. And then we also went to the park.
In the park, yep.
Yeah, where Brooks sat on the bench.
Feeding the pigeons.
Yes. Yeah, and that was really cool too. But yeah, I think overall it was just a kind of a surreal experience to feel like, this is where this movie was shot and we're here and it's still here. And yeah, it was very cool.
And we walked by the store where Red bought the compass.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
right.
That's
Yep.
kind of neat
Like
too.
the antique store.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so just to kind of be in that downtown area and just kind of like, it just gives you more context when you're watching the movie than later to be like, oh yeah, I was there. Like it was, I don't know. It's just kind of like, I don't know. It kind of puts you there literally than just having
Right.
to kind of imagine it when you're watching the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's cool too, just like obviously how I already said, it's in Ohio, which for us native Indianans, Hoosiers, it's not far.
Right.
But I think in the film, they say that it's located in, is it Vermont maybe?
Maine.
Or- Maine. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, you're not really thinking that it's
No.
like, oh yeah, this is just a hop and a skip away from us, But it, I don't know. It was very cool. It very much made me feel more attached to
Yeah.
this film.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's like, I really enjoy that. Like when I think I talked about in the last episode with It's a Wonderful Life,
Yes.
going to the museum out in New York and like seeing the bridge and just different. It wasn't like where it was filmed. It was like I think where it was inspired. The town was kind of inspired of Bedford Falls by that town. So, and then like I remember I was a couple of years ago. I was out in California and I went to a couple of places. I went and saw where the Brady Bunch house was. So that's
Oh,
kind of
nice.
cool.
Yeah.
And then I went to in Malibu State Park, where they filmed like the outside scenes of MASH,
Oh, nice.
which was a series
Yeah.
I always really enjoyed in high school growing up, and
Yeah.
watched it on Syndicate and stuff, of course. But so yeah, just like seeing some of these places. Obviously, California has a ton of them, but even Chicago has a bunch.
Yes.
Yeah. You guys just did The Fugitive a few weeks ago, so
Right.
Yep.
that film and just, tons of movies are filmed, take place in Chicago and used for filming. So that's, you can always see a bunch of places there too, which is cool and close to us.
Yeah, that's awesome. Actually, as we were talking about this, I was like, man, he actually did this for It's a Wonderful Life too, which is super cool. Are there any other movie locations that are like on your list that you want to go to?
None that really stick out. I'm trying to think. The one I did a couple years ago was actually driving back from a work thing I was doing and going by Knightstown, Indiana, where they filmed Hoosiers in the gym.
Oh yeah, yep.
And so that's just right, down the road. And so that's kind of a fun, easy one to check out sometime.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess there aren't any right now that really stick out. Eventually, I'd like to get down to, I think, Savannah, where they filmed some of the Forrest Gump scenes. And
oh yeah, actually,
that's
we've
one of the
been
movies I
there.
like.
Yeah.
Oh really?
Yeah, I completely forgot about that. We did not go there with that intent.
Yeah.
But one of my brothers at the time was living in Savannah.
We did walk by or were nearby one of the parts. I think it was it the park where he sits on the bench?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were there, and Savannah, if you've never been there before, is just absolutely gorgeous. Like,
That's what I've heard. I've never really been that part, but
it's so beautiful and just historically well preserved that it's kind of a lot to take in, just because it's, for me, I mean, obviously I'm not that young, or I'm not that old. I'm younger and haven't traveled that much, but I've never seen anything quite like that.
Yeah.
Whereas just everything was just so well preserved historically. It just feels like you're like 100, 200 years back in time. Yeah. It's very, very cool. So yeah, we were walking around downtown and enjoying, kind of taking in everything. And we did see a few different locations where they shot Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
There were some of those like placards and stuff like that. And there were actually other movies too, actually a lot of movies, but Forrest Gump is the only one that I remember.
And there's not a whole lot of places I would like purposefully travel to see the filming location.
Yeah.
Most often it's like, I'm, traveling here. Let's see if there's any like cool spots around that,
Yeah.
So, or just maybe happen upon some place like that. But, this one was fun because, like you said, it was only a few hours away and
Right.
kind of in the backyard almost.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. We can move on to the movie itself. So, Phil, I remember, I don't know, I've known you like my whole life, but probably.
It is a wonderful life.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. It's probably longer than that. It was probably like 12, 13 years ago or so. We were driving back from a ski trip for our youth group. You were driving, I was sitting up front with you, and we had some other guys in the vehicle with us. And
I hated driving that trip.
yeah, and it was a blizzard.
It was icy. Oh
yeah.
my word. We almost did not go. It was so bad.
Well, and oh
weather.
my gosh,
It was like,
do you remember like the whole way there? A group of high school guys were all being goofy. We kept yelling like fishtail, and then we like go on a ramp onto like this big busy road, and we full on fishtail, and we're all like dead silent.
we almost did a 360.
Yeah, it was crazy, and thankfully nobody was coming, and everything was okay. But
and who's going to be out on the roads in that weather anyway? Right,
exactly. just some people from Indiana. Yeah. So, anyways, we drove up to Michigan, and we skied and everything. And on the way home, it was still a blizzard, and we were just trying to get back home. And so I was sitting up front with you. We were making conversation, and I remember just talking about movies. Little did I know that years later I would be hosting a podcast and having you as a guest on it. But I remember we were talking movies, and you had said, yeah, I think The Shawshank Redemption is probably like one of my all-time favorite movies. Would you still hold that opinion?
Probably. Probably. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, to say all-time favorite still at this point, it's still probably top 10 for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe top 5. I'd have to kind of think through.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
yeah.
definitely enjoy it. I
Yeah.
don't remember that conversation because I was probably like white knuckling it through the
Yeah, you
snow,
were
but-
very focused on getting a group of young guys home to their parents safely.
I'm sure I appreciate the distraction for conversation for sure. But
Yeah.
That's funny.
I don't remember a whole lot other than that, and we were talking about the snow because it was like one of the first snows, and I said something like, "Yeah, man, it's so pretty, when it's white," and you're like, "Yeah, when it's on the ground, not on the road," or something to that effect.
when it's not on the road, it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, okay. So Shawshank, on a scale of 1 to 100, what rating would you give it?
I would give it 93.
Okay. All right. Interesting. So very strong score. I was anticipating you to give it a higher score almost. So, what brings you to a 93?
I like the story a lot. I was actually saw recently where somebody they weren't not like a movie critic or anything, but they just were talking about how Shawshank's very predictable and kind of like it kind of like gives you the ending that you, I guess, expect and hope for, and like and all that, which I'm fine with. I don't
Right.
mind a film being predictable. I kind of enjoy that sometimes. Oftentimes.
Yeah.
So. So that but I don't know. I'm not sure why. 93 is still better than
that's
9 out of 10.
a fantastic score.
But it's and it's a good film. There's maybe a few little parts where I feel like it maybe drags a touch.
Okay.
Throughout, but I really enjoy the narration throughout with Morgan Freeman. That's because it takes place over almost 20 years.
Right.
You kind of need that to like move it along.
Yes.
So I thought that was super. So I did like that. I like the actors. I like the acting. There's not much I don't know if I can think of much that I don't like about the film.
Yeah.
Other than, maybe it does drag a bit here or there, but yeah, it's, and then there's the one character, Bog, is really kind of irritates me, and just,
Yeah.
not that I would lower the score because of that character, because of a character that I don't like, but, because it's obviously part of the movie and
Right.
part of, often probably, part of the prison life and just the whole scene. So it's like you need to have that obviously there, but like but yeah. So yeah, I don't know.
Okay. Awesome. Well,
How about you guys? Did you guys have a rating for it? Do you start thinking about it?
We haven't recorded our part yet.
We
Okay.
have not recorded our part yet. We've been changing that up for when we have
that's right,
guests
yeah.
on the podcast.
That's right, I remember.
I think it gives us better conversation because we haven't spent like a half hour already talking about
That's
it.
true. Yeah.
So we can be fresh. But I think I'd be right in line with your score. What about you?
I don't know. I think because I've only seen it the one time in October, and it was like midnight. So I feel like I need to
Yeah.
watch it again
Yeah.
before I can solidly say a score. But yeah, I'd say probably right around there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a fantastic film. Obviously, as we've both already said, it was new to us. One thing that I did appreciate, like you were mentioning, was the narration, because it is crazy. Just that the film does take place over 20 years, but it feels seamless. Like, it doesn't feel like there's these weird time jumps that are jarring or anything. Like, it feels like a very natural progression.
Right.
And that was done well, and I can very much appreciate that. And I would attribute probably all of that to just how they chose to have Red narrate the transitionary time periods and I guess the film overall. But yeah,
And I think, I don't know for sure. I think this is probably one of the movies that really, not catapulted Morgan Freeman, but his voice, like the whole narration aspect of it.
very
like
true.
You hear him
Yeah,
everywhere, probably, I mean, still like different, stuff and I don't know, commercials or whatever.
right.
Probably
Yeah.
some audiobooks in on his resume by now and stuff. But
Yeah.
but yeah, like his voice is just, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I've seen a few like documentaries of him narrating
Right.
background too,
Yeah.
like nature
Yeah.
things and
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Well, before we go any further, why don't we go ahead and do some trivia? Which you sound like you're very brushed up and ready to go.
We're expecting greatness.
Yes.
I tried to prepare a little bit this time to study ahead.
All right. You want to take us away, Em?
Yep. Okay, first question. When Andy is being questioned in the courtroom, how did he describe the confrontation he had with his wife?
How did he describe the conversation?
Yeah. One word.
I don't remember. Tense?
You're close. Bitter.
Better?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, John.
All right. 0 for 1, Phil. I'm just just messing with you. All right. Question 2. What year was it when Andy escaped?
It's 1966.
Yes. Very good.
What had Tommy been in prison for when Elmo Blatch was his cellmate?
I don't remember. I want to say burglary or something.
Yes, you're on the right track.
Like breaking and entering or...
So it was stealing a car.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I mean
Stealing
you're
a car.
You're right there. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, next question. Throughout the movie, Brooks kept a pet bird. What was the bird's name?
Same name as your brother.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Where did Andy work before he went to prison?
He was a banker.
Yes, correct.
Bank.
Very nice. All right, final question. What does the picture that Warden Norton's wife made him say?
His judgment cometh, and that right soon.
Great.
Yes, sir. Fantastic.
It's a cross stitch.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Which they had also at the
Yeah.
prison that we went to.
Yes.
They had one of those at the prison, yeah.
Yes. Which was very cool. I mean, the whole warden's office was probably the other notable place that sticks out in my mind when we were there.
Yeah.
That place was pretty cool.
So I did have 3 of those on my notes.
Did you really? That's awesome.
Nice. What were some of the other things
About
that you
3 out of
noted
5.
as like research?
What was Morgan Freeman's name, character name? So like
Red.
it was Red,
Yeah.
but like his full name was Ellis Boyd Redding.
Ooh, that
So
would
I
have been a
thought-
good question.
Because you see that on the when he goes into the parole board and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
I thought, well, that you might ask what the posters were in Andy's cell. So there's
that's a
three
great
different
question.
actresses that we see.
Yes.
Do you know who they are?
I do not.
Marilyn Monroe is the one that
Yeah.
he was gifted,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. I actually did almost ask you about that one.
Yeah, the first one was Rita Hayworth.
Okay. I remember that.
because
Yeah.
they talk about there's that film they're watching. called
Yes.
Gilda, and she's
Oh, yeah.
love that thing that she does with her hair.
Yes. Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
And then the last one was Raquel Welch. And that's the one that the warden throws the stone through to. Everybody's in on,
Yes.
including her. He throws a stone at the wall, and it starts,
Yes.
trickling down the hole.
One of the greatest sequences, maybe in film.
Yeah,
That's that chain reaction, and then we get the story about how he escaped. Which I'll save. We can
Yeah.
talk about that later.
the other another thing I thought is what I thought you might ask what instruction does the warden give to the prisoners when Andy first gets there? They're on that line.
Yeah.
He says, do you remember what he says? He says, I believe I believe in two things, discipline and the Bible.
Yes.
Yes, that was one
That was
we
actually-
had and
yeah.
we got rid of.
Yeah.
Yes.
He says, put your trust in the Lord. Your butt belongs to me.
Yes. Yeah. Paraphrasing.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Keeping this PG here.
Yes. Yes.
What else? Oh, Paul McCrane is one of the actors that serves as a guard.
Okay.
His character's name is Trout in the movie.
Okay.
He's got kind of a small parts, but he later plays a surgeon on ER.
Oh, interesting.
So that was kind of cool. Like I remember like my wife and I enjoyed watching ER.
Yeah.
Through the years we have some on DVD and whatnot, but Dr. Romano I think is in ER in the show. He's got
Nice.
he's kind of one of the leads in a few seasons there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fun to like go back and see some of these characters, like where they get their start and kind of early roles in their careers.
I actually have a fact about another one of the guards. I don't remember his character's name in the film, but I would say he was like the captain, or he's the one that beat Boggs. Like,
Oh yeah.
He's played by Clancy Brown. That's the actor who I know, who is like his big career character, maybe. You wouldn't know that he played him, but he's the voice of Mr. Krabs on SpongeBob.
I am the furthest thing from a SpongeBob fan that you can get, and my kids will tell you like somebody I remember called it Square Bob Sponge Pants or something.
Yeah.
I'm just like, turn your brain to mush. Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Well, that's probably one of his biggest roles, because I mean he's been playing that character for over 20 years now.
Wow.
Or voicing that character. Yeah. So, anyways,
Interesting.
he's Clancy Brown has done an insane amount of work.
I still remember when we were watching this, John was like, "That's Mr. Krabs."
Yes.
It's funny because sometimes it's hard to get that out of your head. Like you
Yeah.
can't like, get into it's like almost distracting to you.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes. Right.
when you come across some of those things. Yeah.
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 It's funny.
So, anyways, if I didn't mean to interrupt there, but thought that was perfect.
No, that's
to
right
go
in
on.
line with all these facts. Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much. I did write down the movie that they were watching was Gilda, the Rita Hayworth movie. So I thought you might ask about that.
Yeah.
That was a film from 1946, which was right around the time that It's a Wonderful Life I think was filmed. So it's kind of neat little tie in there. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh, the prison numbers. I thought you might say, what was Andy's prison number?
I did have one that was asking about their cell number.
Oh, okay.
But
yeah,
that's one we scrapped too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Andy's cell number is 246, right? That's what we found.
245 or 246. Yeah, something
like that.
Yeah. I was like, man, that's insanely hard. I would not.
Yeah.
I couldn't even. I don't think I could watch the movie and then tell you that. Like,
yeah.
But anyways, okay, cool. Well, let's talk about the movie. Let's talk about favorite scenes, or maybe some scenes you didn't like, or maybe more specifically, what you think makes this film so great. Because I do think that this is one of those films that is probably going to be maybe foundational in terms of film history. There are some movies that just seem to have a life beyond its theatrical release and the hype around that and stuff like that. And things like Casablanca and It's a Wonderful Life. And I think this very much fits into that category. It's kind of had a life that has just continued on. And obviously when we were at the prison, in Ohio, the Ohio State Penitentiary, taking the tour and everything, I mean, there were all sorts of people there, and they were all there for the fact that this is where Shawshank was shot.
Yeah.
So if that's any sort of indicator that like this movie has really had an impact on our culture, why do you think that is? And what do you think makes it so great, or some of the scenes that really stick out to you?
I mean, one of the things that kind of fascinates me is like the whole, like, just like being in prison regardless, but like being in prison when you're innocent of the crime is really kind of intriguing. Other movies I think about is like Prison Break. Well, that's not a movie, but Prison Break, which is a show on Fox, back in the early 2000s, I think. And like there's I think Sylvester Stallone movie called Escape, and like his Escape movie series. Yeah. So like just, I don't know, other something about that's just kind of intriguing. I think just the whole like kind of depiction of prison life and stuff. Especially when, again, they're not guilty of the crime they committed. And kind of just to see, okay, how all that plays out. And it can be very like, I find myself like frustrated, like that, this person's in a situation. Cause like, what if it was me? Like, I'm just trying to, live my life and, be a good guy in this world. And what if I just, get accused and prosecuted for something I didn't even do? Like, how, so anyway, just, I don't know. It kind of like makes you think a little bit, I guess, some different things along those lines. But one of the things I think I appreciated with this film is that Andy, regardless of his circumstances, still like made something of himself, like still pursued some way to contribute to society, so to speak. And that, granted, the society was just, within the prison walls, but he just still like did what he could, thinking about the library he kind of built up and helping, with taxes and stuff and all, for the prison guards and stuff. Still tried to contribute where he could and where his talents were. So I think that resonates with the audience in terms of like, we're all trying to, do our best to contribute, to the best that we can to whatever capacity that we're capable of. And I think that was, kind of a big part of kind of the whole, probably really a theme I think throughout the film that kind of struck me.
Yeah. That's one thing that I actually had this conversation with a coworker years before I had seen Shawshank. We were just talking about the idea of like, what would we do if we were wrongfully imprisoned, or even just if we were in prison? Like, what do you do in that situation? And he's a Christian too, and so we're just kind of talking through that. And he's like, like he was like, I don't think you really have an option. Like, if you find yourself in that situation, you have to be a prison preacher. Like, you have to do something, and that's the perfect opportunity, meeting a need. And so just kind of along the lines of what you're getting at is that it wasn't kind of this end of the line for Andy once he got there. It was like, it was obviously hard for him in a lot of ways, but as soon as he got the opportunity to help the captain out and just say like, hey, like, do you trust your wife? And his social skills, maybe the way he communicated, but it was coming from a point of view where it's like, hey, like, I have this knowledge and I'm like, I will gladly share it with you, just because that's who Andy was. And so and then continue down that pathway and kind of even going as far as starting the library and, helping people with their taxes. And I think maybe one of the coolest things is, what is his name? The young man, we said his name earlier.
Tommy.
Yeah, Tommy. Even like taking Tommy under his wing. Yeah. And, like getting him to try and get his high school diploma and everything, like helping him study. And like he really did not give up on himself, like write himself off once he was there. And I very much appreciate that too.
Yeah. And even like when, Red finally befriended him, I think it took a couple of years. Doesn't really seem like that long, but in the movie, it doesn't seem like it's that long. But I think kind of trying to track the time, Andy went in in 1947. He then asked for the poster in 1949. So it was like a 2-year gap.
Yeah.
And like, I think once he did that, then he and Red started to kind of form more of a friendship. And then, kind of had their broader group of friends, at the lunch table and in the courtyard and stuff. But I think that whole thing, you need to help through life. You can't just kind of do it alone, and like you need friends alongside you to kind of encourage you when things are kind of bleak, and like
Right.
kind of celebrating your times of success and stuff. So and obviously in prison, in the movie, like, there were a lot of bleak times. There were a lot of like discouraging moments, and like Red going through a couple times in front of the parole board and getting denied, and Andy getting thrown in the hole for just different things for weeks at a time, and getting beat up, several times. Just all those things are difficult on their own, and then much more difficult without like friends to kind of support you.
Right.
Right. Yeah. It the relationship between Red and Andy is probably one of the coolest parts about this film. Just because they do have 20 years to cover, where you get to see it unfold and develop and see them kind of grow old together and like truly become friends. That's probably what makes the ending of the movie so good. Which we don't have to talk about that now, but yes,
Right.
The friendship is very special.
Yeah. And then, I guess as far as like favorite scenes, you mentioned the whole deal with Andy approaching, the guard and like
Yeah.
Haywood I think his name's Haywood. Is that right?
Yeah, that sounds right.
And ask him if he trusts his wife. That whole scene of them working on the roof, and then he gets the beers for the men to,
Yeah.
helping out Haywood and stuff. And he just has this like satisfying look on his face, when it's all kind of done, and it's so that's a really good scene that I enjoy. I mentioned the whole reveal of the prison at the very start of the movie.
Yes.
When he's going in, that they kind of, I don't know what they used. If they had drones back then, probably not yet, but
Probably a helicopter would be my guess. Yeah.
This kind of the whole scene, like going through the whole area, is really cool to kind of like paint the picture of like what he's getting into, and again talking about the facility being a character in the film, and it just kind of tries to sort of set the stage for you of where he's going, and I think that's a neat part.
I think that for me was probably one of my favorite scenes or sequences in the film, was that opening shot where they zoom over the prison and you kind of see everything. I would say it sticks in my brain so deeply because of the score. The score in that sequence is just like, I don't know, it's so perfect for what it is. Like, you're going to a prison, so it should feel kind of like bleak and depressing and maybe overwhelming, but also like there's a lot of intrigue there, and I don't know, I think the score perfectly reflects the emotions that you would be encountering as you're going there, but it also, like, it's a movie, so for the audience, like, you should be drawn in a sense, because it's like, hey, this is where the story's all going to take place. This is where it's all going to unfold. And so it really drew me in. And it was like one of those things where, as we were driving, to go to the prison because we met you kind of halfway. Then we all rode together, and like I just kept playing the score. Mostly, specifically that sequence, I would just restart it. I'm like, I gotta get in the right Shawshank mindset.
We should have had it playing as we pulled up to the prison too.
Yeah, we should have. That would have been perfect. As we're looking on at the food trucks.
Yeah. But for the audience, Google the Ohio State Reformatory, and you'll get some good pictures and stuff that you can kind of look at, and they have a whole website, and I think there's a virtual tour you can take for like $5 if you want to.
Oh, that's cool.
Want to do that on the website too, but yeah, that kind of give you an idea of what some of the, especially the exterior shots, looks like and stuff. So yeah. I guess kind of the other, kind of mentioned it too, but like, getting to see the facility and like the warden's office.
Yeah.
But like, not just the office, but like being able to look at the view out the window and like, it being like the same as you see in the movie, and you're like, okay, this is like, it's kind of cool. They didn't like green screen this, part of this and all that. Right. So it's kind of like, it's kind of neat how that's all set up well for the filming of that, of those scenes.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause it's like that, this is one of the huge moments, like where the police show up and everything. And like, you're able to actually be in that moment, and it's crazy.
Yeah. Other scenes I enjoyed was like when Andy gets the job doing the tax returns for the guards, and then they postponed the softball game so the other opposing team guards can like get their taxes done. And that whole like scenario kind of going on. And then when he gets the books and he plays the opera music over the loudspeakers, and he gets like in huge trouble for that whole thing. And the guard's like, I'm gonna go pinch a loaf.
Right. Yeah.
And you have all this cleaned up before the warden gets back.
We did that.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
Yeah. So that's because you don't have a whole lot of like comedic moments in that movie, obviously.
No.
So when it comes along, you almost enjoy it more just because it's a little break from the stress of the whole prison life movie and stuff. And then like the talk in the yard with Red, he's like really looking like he's at the end of his rope, Andy is. Yeah. And he's kind of like, just like sitting along the wall, like talking to Red about, what he hopes for. Right. So like hope is kind of another theme throughout the film, and wanted to go to Zawataneo and, use that as his, place where he would escape everything. And I really, I enjoyed that scene and the moment between those two.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, this feels like the right time and the perfect segue to talk about the ending.
Yeah.
Because the whole kind of lead up there where it seems like Andy's going to break. And like, you don't really know what's going to happen, especially like for our first viewing. Like we were both kind of worried that he was going to take the same route that Brooks did.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I mean, he really seemed like the prison had finally broke him. Mm-hmm. So then we have this amazing ending sequence where, they go to, the guards come, they call out the prisoners to come out of their cells, and Andy doesn't. And then it kind of even leans more into this idea like, oh no, did he take his own life? And like, so then they finally get there and there's nobody there. Like he's not there. And it's like, oh, okay. Like, okay, what's happened? And you're just like waiting for it to unfold. And they keep building up all this tension, and like the warden loses it and throws the rock, and it goes through the poster. And then you get the amazing reveal, like with all of those guys looking into the hole. And then you get this ridiculously cool sequence of like how he did it.
Yeah.
And you have Red kind of talking about it all. And you get to see Andy doing it, and you finally get this like amazing triumph scene.
Yes.
You know, he crawls through the pipes, and he finally gets out, dumps into the river, and it's raining, and just like this incredible sequence where like he overcame. And you know, from there, like the story continues, but I guess I'll pause there real quick before continuing. I think that scene specifically is maybe what, at least for me, makes this movie so great. Just because like the movie and the story is incredibly well done through and through. Whether it's predictable or not, and I don't even know if I would agree with the idea that it's predictable. I can see how after having seen it or seen it multiple times,
Right. That's true.
that's like, oh yeah, this is what's going to happen. But on the first watch through, I did not feel like, hey, he's definitely going to get out.
Yeah.
Like,
And I don't know. I'm not sure that I did either when I first, watched it for the first time. But it's been so long ago, I'm not sure how I felt.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess maybe the only criticism that could lean into the idea of it being predictable is the name itself, having redemption in the title.
Right.
So that you have to kind of assume there's some sort of redeeming story thread.
And this is based on a story by Stephen King. So
Right.
if you were familiar with the story, then you probably would have been familiar with.
That's also very
with some
true.
I've never read this story myself, so
Yeah, is a novella, right? Like
Right, yeah,
a
it's a
short
novella.
story by Stephen King, which was very like highly interesting. I had no idea that
which
that
I
was.
think is called Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption.
Yes,
Yes,
it
it
is.
is.
If I remember
Yeah.
right.
Yep. Yeah. Maybe
So, yeah.
a little long for a movie title.
Yeah.
But anyways, like that moment specifically where he falls into the river is just ingrained in my brain because the score is playing again. The score is perfect because you do have like the same tones of like the prison, kind of the character of the prison, but then you get like the resounding hope and triumph that comes through that's blended in with the kind of prison theme. And just everything is perfectly executed, in my opinion, as far as like cinematography, score, acting, everything in that sequence hits everything that it should be hitting in order for it to be great. So I love that scene.
Yeah.
And then the story continues. And, we have Red getting he finally gets out of Shawshank and he goes to the tree that Andy made him promised.
Yeah.
And he digs up the lunchbox and finds the notes and the money and
Which kind of harkens back to that conversation that they had that I was talking about earlier. That was one of the things that they talked about was like, if you ever get out of here, where the, I don't know, hayfields or whatever are up in whatever location. And he's like, well, there's a lot of hayfields out there.
Yeah.
There's this particular one. There's a rock wall and big oak tree. And
Yeah.
specified where to go and find that. That was, And so, go ahead with that.
And so he does that. He follows through with the promise that he made to Andy, and then finds the note from him and the map and everything, and then you get this awesome reuniting scene, like where they're in
Zawataneo.
yes, where they're there, and Andy's working on the boat, and he can't hardly believe that he actually is seeing Red again, and that he followed through, and just the idea of friendship.
Right.
But that too is like incredible. And I would say I firmly feel that the movie would not be nearly as good without that ending. For any like film critics that are maybe snobs or whatever you want to call it, that are just like, oh, it's cheesy or whatever. Like, I could not disagree more. For Andy and Red to be reunited is fantastic. And I learned actually from our pastor, Jeff, who's been a guest on the podcast 3 times, that was not the original ending for the movie. They had planned to leave it very ambiguous. and just kind of open to interpretation as far as, did Red follow through? Did they get back together? You know, things like that. And I don't remember if it was Morgan Freeman or I can't think of the actor's name.
Tim Robbins.
Yeah, Tim Robbins. If it was one of them who suggested, like, hey, like, what if we maybe just shot it? Like, let's just do it. And, you know, if you don't like it, just cut it. Like, just don't keep it in the movie. And so they did. They shot it, and they're like, this is perfect. They love it. Yeah. And I don't know. I think Hollywood is very different today than it was back in the 90s, early 2000s, because there was kind of a currency of sincerity in terms of storytelling. And I feel like overall that's kind of not the focus anymore. But that's a different discussion for another time. But anyways, the fact that they included the follow through, I think, is also what makes the movie so good.
It's a very satisfying ending. And,
yes,
you know, you have Andy, who you wanted to, you know, get out of there because he was innocent. And you just grew to love Red.
Right.
And, you know, he'd been there for, you know, 30, 40 years and had, you know, obviously reformed, you know.
Right.
So it was satisfying to see him, you know, get out of there too and flee down to Mexico. But that scene too, where, you know, they show the hole in the wall reveal with the warden and the guards kind of looking in, and the camera pans back. That's one of my favorites, you know, too, right before.
Yes.
Seeing everything. I did always kind of wonder, like, how far he had to dig, or how far he had to, like, break through that wall. Like, how many feet was that, you know, in length to, like,
right,
you know, dig through that, get rid of all the dirt and rocks.
Right.
Yeah.
And crawl through that. But, which I don't think they ever, like, really talk about, but yeah, like you mentioned, everything comes together so well. I think that's probably part of what makes this film so great, is like, it's not like a really good story. It's also like really well done.
Yes.
And music makes that music, and like the cinematography, like the camera shots, like, all that just come together, like you said, just so perfectly. Is this, you don't see that, you know, all the time. So yeah, it's maybe one of my favorite endings to a movie just in general, because it is it feels like you're fighting for that ending the whole time you're watching it. Yeah.
Just because, like, you're watching the character of Andy get beat down the whole time.
Yeah.
And somebody that you as an audience member knows is innocent, and you're rooting for him. You just want him to have some sort of resolution that isn't horrible.
Yeah.
And it is an uphill battle the whole way there. And it kind of feels like despair because, you know, Brooks dies, and Andy seems like he's heading in the same route, and
the whole
Tommy,
timing, the whole situation was
and you know, the warden, who seemed like he was kind of on Andy's side at the beginning, like very much turns on him, and
Red keeps getting denied over and over again.
Yes, I mean, just very hard. And so to finally get to that point where it's like, hey, we're here. Like, you arrived. It makes it more worth it. And that's probably a credit to the film as a whole, just how not only is the ending fantastic, like it's a great resolution and it's a great payoff, but all the other parts are done extremely well too, because it makes you as an audience member fight for the ending. Yeah.
That's interesting. So at the end, after he gets out, here's another little trivia question for you. He goes to the bank, right, to get all his money.
Yeah.
Or 12 banks, whatever it is, across the Portland, Maine area that day. Andy visited 12 banks over that day, he says. And do you remember the fictitious name that Andy used of the...
Oh my gosh. I literally just read this yesterday,
the accounts.
and I can't remember what it was.
I do not.
Randall Stevens.
Randall Stevens.
I was going to guess it started with an R, but...
Yeah. And then, crawled through 500 feet of crap to get to the other side.
Yep. Yes. Oh, man.
I think that's all I had in my notes that I wanted to touch on. But
Nice.
yeah, just such a great movie. So
Yeah, it was a fantastic film. One that we're really glad we not only got to watch for the first time and cover on the podcast, but we also got
travel
to.
to.
Yeah, we got to
Yeah.
travel to and be a part of one of the main characters of the movie.
yeah, just to be able to experience it, so to speak, in a different way than just through screen. So yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, Phil, thank you so much for joining us again. You have been a wonderful guest. Thank you for not only recommending the movie to us, but also like, hey, why don't we go check it out? I think it made for a really special episode, but also a really special finale for our season 3. So thank you for being a part of our finale. Thank you for recommending the movie, and we just are really glad to have you here on the show again.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much. It was an honor to be a part of this.
Yeah, of course.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for listening. And thank you, Phil, again for coming into the studio. We had a lot of fun talking about this movie with you and also visiting the site that this movie was filmed on with you. It was an awesome experience. And John and I have already been talking about wanting to go back. I don't remember if we talked about this with Phil or not, but we were talking to my dad about it. As I had mentioned previously, he's a police officer and he loves prison movies too. And so I had mentioned to him that we were going, and he went the very next weekend and he loved it too. So if you guys have not been or did not know that this movie was filmed at an actual prison in Ohio, you should totally go check it out. It was a very cool experience.
Yeah, it was a memory, that we'll carry for the rest of our lives. Something extremely special and super cool that we got to make that memory with Phil. So yes, Phil, thank you for being on the podcast with us. It was a lot of fun talking with you. But also it was your idea to go to the Ohio State Reformatory. So thank you for inviting us.
Thanks for driving.
Thank you for driving. It was a lot of fun, and it's a great memory that we get to share with you as well. And we're really, really thankful for that.
Yes.
So as Emily said, if you guys have not been, or you really like this movie and you'd be interested in that, it's not a bad drive, depending on where you're at, obviously. But even, I think 10 minutes away from the prison, there's a really cool downtown area. We got some food, and it's a fun trip. It's worth checking out. So I would encourage you to go do that if that's of interest.
Yeah.
But with that, I think that pretty much wraps this episode up.
Yeah. So right now would normally be when we, say what movie we're covering next week and where it's streaming at.
Yes. And because this is the season finale, we are not going to be doing that for obvious reasons. So at the end of season 1 and at the end of season 2, we kind of plugged the next season and what that would look like. And we are actually not going to be doing that either this time around. This is not the end of Married to Movies, but we are taking a break. And we are more than likely going to be done with the seasonal format as a whole. This has been an adventure for Emily and I that stemmed from having a lot of time on our hands. 3 years ago, life looked very different for us. And we had the ability to say, you know what, let's do something together as a married couple where we can make memories together. So what if this podcast never blows up, if we never make money from it, if nobody listens to it, at least it's something that we did together.
Right.
And we have accomplished that. And in the meantime, life has gotten extremely busy for us. And we're thankful for that. And that is a good thing.
It's a good problem to have.
Yes. We are not complaining about that. But we also have to recognize our own limits. And so right now, we just can't commit as much time to this as we were once able to. So we are no longer going to be proceeding with seasons for Married to Movies. And we don't know when we'll be back. But we will be back at some point. There are a handful of friends and family members that really want to do an episode with us, and we really want to have them on here. One of our nephews, Gabe, who's a faithful listener, really wants to be on the show, and we're going to make that happen, as well as many friends from church who want to be on the show. And so we really want to do that, and that will happen at some point. Those will be, right now, we're kind of just referring to them as special episodes. Whenever we start doing that, they're not going to be weekly episodes. It might just be once a month or once every other month or something to that effect. We're still figuring out the details, but we will be back.
Yes.
So in the meantime, we just want to thank you guys. Thank you for faithfully listening. Thank you for supporting us. Whether it's in person, we've received lots of text messages. I've seen, people have texted me pictures of, or messaged on Instagram pictures of people like wearing a movie t-shirt or something, being like, oh, you guys, you should cover this. People love this, or, things like that. And we're really thankful for that. We're thankful for you guys, the support that you've given us. It's been a blessing to do this together, and we're excited to do more of it at a future time, just not right now. So with that, we love you guys. We hope that you take care of yourselves, and we will be back eventually.
See you next time.
Bye, guys.